The scheduling gods have decided to send us into the weekend on a high note because we have Jacob deGrom on tonight's slate for daily fantasy baseball, and that is always going to be a good thing. And the question, as always, is can we justify anybody else in MLB DFS? Because deGrom is, frankly, on his own tier from a DFS perspective, and we have to kind of talk ourselves into someone else being on that level. So our job for today is to decide, do we just use deGrom against the New York Yankees, or is there anybody else in that tier who can push him for that top pitching slot for tonight? Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire, here to break down Friday's 11-game main slate with locks set for 7:05 p.m. Eastern for today. Before we dive into the pitching, there are a couple weather notes here, and these ones are important because there is a very high chance of a rainout tonight in DC for the Nationals and the Pirates. I don't think they're going to play that game. I wouldn't bother digging into that game very much. It seems toast. So would not worry too much about Nationals and Pirates because I think that game will be postponed. Rain is not as bad in New York for the Mets and Braves. Still likely a drizzle there at least. I think they should be able to play through it, but I'd check back on that one later on. So I'd basically just cross off Nationals Pirates and then check back on the timing for weather for the Mets and the Braves later on. Do not forget to make sure you're subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast on your podcast platform of choice. Hit subscribe, and if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. MLB every weekday, PGA every week, UFC for the big events as well, all in this same place. And of course, the solo shot also over on the FanDuel YouTube page. The NBA playoffs are here, and you can turn crossovers into cash with FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel right now and place a $5 bet. You'll get an instant $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Just go to FanDuel and sign up and get $150 in bonus bets when you place your first $5 bet. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. And Massachusetts Hope is here. GamblingHelplineMA.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. In New York, 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In Connecticut, 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. In Wyoming and Kansas, 1-800-522-4700 or in Kansas, ksgamblinghelp.com. Louisiana is 1-877-770-STOP. In Maryland, mdgamblinghelp.org. And in West Virginia, go to 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Pitching preview for this Friday main slate. Shocker, Jacob deGrom comes in with the highest salary on FanDuel. He is $11,400, followed by Luis Castillo at $11,000. Framber Valdez is at $10,500 with Zach Eflin at $10,000 flat. Alek Manoah, 98 against Castillo. Shane Bieber, 96 with Max Fried at 94. Dustin May, 91. Aaron Nola facing Valdez at 9,000. Then we have Lucas Giolito, Wade Miley, Nick Pivetta, Jack Flaherty, David Peterson, and Rich Hill as the others at $8,000 or higher. Now, when you hear that list, there's some guys in there who could be kind of fun. You know, Max Fried, always good, but coming off an injury. Eflin's pitched well so far this year, but salary's a little high. Castillo on the road against a very tough Blue Jays team. So there aren't a lot of contenders here. I do think that Framber Valdez is firmly second, but I also feel pretty good in saying Jacob deGrom is firmly first. So in the question of can anybody push deGrom for tonight, I think the answer right now is frankly no. And he's facing the Yankees, and obviously that means the appeal might not be as big as usual. But Aaron Judge is banged up and might not be able to play here. And if Judge sits, I think that deGrom goes from being in his own tier to being several tiers above everybody else. The strike area for the Yankees is a bit better than average at 21%. So it's not fun. It's not a high strikeout rate, but it's also not unreasonably low. And deGrom is pitching great. In his most recent start, he went back to using his slider pretty heavily. Got 11 strikeouts there. Before that, though, his slider usage had been down. And I would not be shocked if it goes back down once again here. So I want to take the most pessimistic view of deGrom and look at him in the starts since that decreased slider usage began. Well, again, with the caveat there that he did pick it back up in his most recent start. Even in that sample, his skill interactive ERA is 1.79. That is a 1 at the front, 1.79, 42% strikeout rate. It is unfathomably good. Even when I try to concoct the worst case scenario for deGrom, he's still bananas. I haven't projected for just 92 pitches here because he did have a short start earlier on, but that's still enough for 9.4 projected strikeouts. Nobody else on this slate is within 2 strikeouts of that. So even with deGrom having a lower pitch count projection, even if we assume Aaron Judge plays, I think that deGrom is the top guy in the slate, one tier above everybody else. And if we get no Aaron Judge here, it's deGrom several tiers above the field. With that said, Valdez, I think, is firmly second. I think that he is also, at least for me, in a tier of his own. He's facing the Phillies, and they're not a bad offense. They've got a 111 WRC plus against lefties, so not a great matchup in that regard, but they will strike out. They have a 24% strikeout rate against lefties, and that's a boost for Valdez, who has been boosting himself quite a bit recently. The velocity for Valdez this year is up a pretty decent amount. He has a 2.98 skill interactive ERA, 26% strikeout rate, and he's doing that while still maintaining his fly ball rate at 17%. So still killing worms across the board. That means that Valdez is a great real world pitcher, and he's getting more strikeouts now as well, which makes him a better pitcher for DFS. This is a high strikeout spot here against the Phillies. I have Valdez projected for 7.3 strikeouts, which ranks second behind deGrom. Again, not within 2 strikeouts of him, but still pretty high. And I think we put Valdez firmly in the 2 hole. So what I would do is kind of ask yourself, what are the odds deGrom flops, and take that probability and kind of put Valdez into that probability. So if you think that it's a 25% chance that deGrom does not do well, take that 25%. Make it from Valdez lineups. I think that's why I'd want to play things for tonight, because those 2 to me are the runaway top options for tonight. To be fully honest, I don't like any of the value plays. Just going to be honest with you. I think you should spend up a pitcher for tonight, but I understand if you disagree. If you insist on a value play, the one guy who's usable, I would say, is David Peterson. And to be clear, there's a chance that this is David Peterson's last start because he has a 7.36 ERA. Justin Verlander's lurking. Max Scherzer will be unsuspended eventually. So Peterson may be pitching for his spot in the rotation right now. And it's not like that bad ERA is fluky because his expected ERA is 5.48. The reason I'm highest on Peterson among the value plays is strikeouts. He has a 26% strikeout rate across 5 starts. He has a 12.4% swinging strike rate. So those are good numbers. He's facing the Braves tonight, 119 WRC plus against lefties, 22% strikeout rate. They are not a good matchup, again, which is why I have low confidence here. I do have Peterson projected for 6.12 strikeouts for tonight, so it's actually a decent number for value play, especially one that I seem to have such low confidence in. I have low confidence because I think his struggles are legit. So Peterson is my top value, and I'm pretty sure, I feel good about that part, but I'm also pretty confident I won't be using him. So to me, it's a slate where I want to spend up. I want to go deGrom. I want to go Valdez pretty hard. If you really want to value play to jam in everybody at Coors Field or everybody somewhere else, then Peterson's your top guy. But for me, it really is all about spending up for tonight. Now, you can stack Coors Field and use deGrom because of some of the salaries in the Rockies. And the Rockies will be our number 2 stack for tonight. Number 1 is the other side of that game in the Arizona Diamondbacks. We'll start with them, and then we'll talk about the Rockies as a way to save some salary for Jacob deGrom. The Diamondbacks facing Kyle Freeland, who got off to a good start this year, but hasn't been able to maintain it. Across his 5 starts, his skill interactive ERA is 5.02, strikeout rate low at 16%, 38% hard hit rate, and a 46% fly ball rate. So low strikeout rate, a lot of hard contact, a lot of fly balls. Now, Freeland's expected ERA is better than his skill interactive ERA, which likely means that the fly balls specifically are not well struck, and that could allow him to get around a high fly ball rate at Coors Field. But couldn't get around the Pirates at Coors. He let up 9 total runs there. 7 of those were earned. He also let up 3 homers to the Phillies on the road last time out. Now he's back at home. And yeah, Arizona, I think, stinks against lefties. I still think they deserve to be on our list here regardless. So Arizona, to me, the top stack of the night against Freeland, despite the fact that I'm not very high in them against lefties. Now, it is a lefty on lefty matchup for Corbin Carroll, and he does get a downgrade there as a result of that. But in a pretty small sample, he has a 164 ISO against lefties. He's stolen 3 bases against them too. So he'll probably get moved down to 6th or so in the order, but I think it's still worthwhile to be in on him for tonight. You could look at that salary of 38 and be like, batting 6th, that Coors Field on a slate where I want deGrom. Maybe you're not super enthused about that. I get that for sure, but I still think he's worth that personally. So I'm still in on Carroll despite the lefty on lefty matchup. Think he's still worth that, and he's still a guy I'd be willing to use. The one downside with the Diamondbacks is they did not slip through the cracks. Their salaries are quite high. The same is not true for the Rockies. They have nobody with a salary above $3,400, which means we can use them while stacking deGrom and feel good about it. And actually, there's a guy at minimum salary here who I do like. But the reason we are here on the Rockies is they're facing Merrill Kelly. He has a 3.42 ERA so far this year, which is very good. But his skill interactive ERA is 5.21. His expected ERA is 5.71. And that allows us to stack against him at Coors Field. The primary issue for Kelly is walks. He has a 16% walk rate, which means he's letting up a lot of guys on base. The batted ball data is the same as it was last year, which means it's basically fine because last year, Kelly had a 3.37 ERA, which is a very good number. But now he's walking more guys without making any big gains elsewhere. That can work in some spots for sure, but I'm not sure Coors Field is one of those. So I think we can feel pretty good about the Rockies here, even with Kelly's success both last year and the results he has gotten so far this year. Now, the guy who I think is kind of like the skeleton key for unlocking the Jacob deGrom stacks is Brenton Doyle. Just got called up here for the Rockies a couple days ago, and his salary is minimum $2,000. Not even the Coors minimum of 25. It is minimum. He is 25, Doyle is, so he's not a young pup, and he does strike out a lot. But last year in the minors, 23 stolen bases, 26 home runs. Before his promotion this year, he had a 327 ISO in the minors. So he might not be perfect, but his salary is $2,000. He has 2 paths to upside. I'm fine taking a swing at that. So if you want to jam in Jacob deGrom and stack Coors Field, Brenton Doyle's probably the way to do so. Minimum salary, I think that makes a lot of sense. So I'll be looking there for sure in terms of making it easier to jam in deGrom with your Coors Field stacks. Outside of Coors Field, I think you can get some value in stacking the Brewers. Brewers facing Tyler Anderson first night, and Anderson was really good last year. He had a 2.57 ERA, but the velocity this year is down, and I think we should stack the Brewers here against him as a result of that. The fastball velocity for Anderson is down 1 mile per hour. His cutter's down about a half mile per hour, but it's not just the velocity that's down. His spin rate is down, movement is down, and it's leading to Anderson's stuff getting just crushed. His expected ERA is 5.97. His skill interactive ERA is 5.94. So he should turn things around eventually. I think that Anderson is a good pitcher, but I want to see it first, given how bad the velocity is. And that leads to stacking the Brewers for tonight. I do feel pretty good about them, despite the fact it's a small sample of struggles for Anderson thus far. Within the Brewer stack, you can get some good values. Willy Adames hasn't had like a tremendous year by any means, but his salary is down to $3,000. William Contreras, the guy we discussed quite a bit, his salary is $28,000. And I feel like we're going to see him come on here pretty soon. The hard hit rate is pretty good for him still. Not a huge barrel rate, but a lot of good hard contact. 243 ISO for William Contreras against lefties since the start of last year. So Brian Anderson gets bumped up against lefty, not a value play, but gets bumped up. Maybe you can consider Luke Voit in the situation. I think that the Brewers make a lot of sense as a way to save salary. So between Doyle and the Brewers, I think we should have enough salary saved here to get to Jacob deGrom and not have to sacrifice upside across the board. Things to watch for this Friday slate. I'm frankly unsure what to think of Jack Flaherty because he has a 3.29 ERA this year, but his skill interactive ERA is 5.46. So that's a pretty big gap. And if you have a 5.46 skill interactive ERA against the Dodgers, we're probably stacking against that. But Flaherty looked a lot better last time out. He had 9 strikeouts across 6 innings. He threw more curveballs there, so there was a change in his approach. His velocity was better, so a change in velocity too. If not for that one start, I would likely stack the Dodgers here. And I still think you could, because it is just one start, but there were tangible shifts there in the pitch mix, in the velocity. And I think as a result of that, I'm less enthusiastic here. So probably not going to be there, but I understand if you want to do so yourself. The Guardians are facing Nick Pivetta, who can get some strikeouts, but also lets up a lot of hard contact. The Guardians, not the most powerful team, but they're in a good spot here in terms of some power. So I think for tournaments, if you want some one-offs, Josh Naylor's salary is low. I think you could go here to look for some guys who could get some power. Pavetta's overall numbers are not bad, which means this is primarily a tournament-only situation, but the Guardians are in play, at least for that. Finally, the Rangers facing Clark Schmidt in that deGrom game, who's letting up a lot of hard contact. So that's good for one-offs. The Rangers have a lot of guys with individual upside. They're not a low salary team, which is why I don't think I can stack them with deGrom, but they're worth a look. They have guys who can definitely hit it pretty hard. So I think for one-offs they work, or if you decide to go Peterson, you want to go there, I think that could work as well. Let's finish up here with the dinger calls for Friday night. The boring one going out to Coors Field. Ryan McMahon's barrel rate this year is 20%. He's striking out way too much, which is a concern against Merrill Kelly, but it's a 20% barrel rate at Coors Field. His salary is $3,100. I'm not going to say no to that. So Ryan McMahon, the first home run call for today. The fun one, mentioned Josh Naylor facing off against Pivetta, lets up a lot of hard contact, got that short porch out in right field at Fenway. I think Naylor could take advantage. So Josh Naylor, the fun one, Ryan McMahon, the boring one for the home run calls for today. That's all we got for this Friday slate in MLB DFS. I think it should be pretty good. I enjoy having high salaried pitchers. I feel good about. We get that with both deGrom and Valdez. So to me, pretty fun slate to dive into. Do not forget to subscribe to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. We are here every weekday breaking down MLB DFS and also over on the FanDuel YouTube page. So subscribe there, give a thumbs up if you like what you hear, and also on Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star rating. We appreciate those of you who have done both of those already. If you have any questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. I want to thank you all for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineups and have a fantastic weekend. We'll talk to you once again on Monday. This has been the solo shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.